Hello, 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 and welcome to Updog Sports Talk. My name is Matt Miller. Joining me today is Intern Tones and Justin McGovern. What's going on, fellas?
Top of the morning.
We
Yeah.
are recording on a different day than we normally record, so we have our coffees instead of waters. So this will be pretty entertaining. Today, Justin, what are we talking about?
We are talking about the most hatingest division in the NFL, the AFC North.
Yeah, just straight up rock fight of a division. No domes, all elements. It's fantastic football. Before we get into that, just want to tell everybody about who we are. So we're Updog Sports Talk. We like to stick up for the little guy. Justin being a Bills fan, Tony and I being Bengals fans. We've gone through our fair share of fandom turmoil. So we like to stick up for the less represented teams. So sit back, relax, and watch us evenly give out sports takes on each team. So AFC North, it's here, boys.
All right.
Coming
So,
soon.
I guess one of the storylines was last night the Browns played the.
So we're starting with the Cleveland
Panthers.
Browns. Let's
I was transitioning a different way, Justin. Thank you. That game was last night, and the Browns weren't a very good football team last year. Them being the worst in the division in 2024, we are going to start with them. They brought in a handful of new players, mostly backups, but they brought in Deontay Johnson, DeAndre Carter. He's a receiver. Cornelius Lucas at left tackle. Tevin Jenkins. Bunch of other backups. Joe Flacco. They brought in Tyler Huntley for whatever reason. We'll get to that in a second. But they got Travion Williams from the Bengals. Or no, they didn't get him. That's a different Travion Williams. Signed Malik Collins, Jerome Baker, a bunch of backups on defense as well. So I guess we can start with Justin. Who else did they bring in the draft?
Well, they had a lot of draft picks this year, so the Browns were able to make a lot of moves. They made a pretty good first round pick. I know Tony's going to be real excited about this one. Mason Graham, to fill a really big hole in the interior of their defensive line. Another person besides Myles Garrett that can get up to the quarterback. They have a major. We'll get to this a little bit more, but they have a major concern at linebacker with just lots of guys. They have an injury there, and Jordan Hicks, who Tony and I went to high school with, retired. So they really needed
Hey, he
Carson.
was in my math class too.
Yeah, then you switch schools, nerd.
I'm going to butcher this name, but Carson Schweisinger, I think is how you pronounce it, from a linebacker out of UCLA.
Schlesinger?
Helps out there. Schwessinger. And then you have Sean Judkins, who is
remains to be
probably
signed.
Remains to be signed. He is potentially their he could be their top running back, but of course, yet to be signed and other legal issues that need to be sorted out. So that'll be kind of interesting. One of the picks I love the most, and I think we love the most, is Harold Fannin out of Bowling Green. That was an absolute steal in the third round. That was just a genius pick by the Browns. Like that was probably their best pick of the draft. He
Hometown
is going
player. They develop tight ends really nicely, so he's probably gonna do pretty well. Like once he starts getting a little bit of playing time. Love Harold Fannin.
Yeah. Well, and I think last night's preseason game was an indication he already has a valuable spot because they barely played him. Usually in that early preseason game, if they're not playing, they consider you a key player for the year because they don't want them to get hurt. They drafted Dylan Gabriel out of Oregon. Kind of, it was an interesting pick. I was not expecting that. We'll see what he can do for them. Obviously, he's a little bit limited as a quarterback, but maybe he could turn out to be a solid starter for them. Dylan Sampson, if if Judkins doesn't get his stuff resolved, Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee was another good pick at running back. He's a guy who can really make an impact. And then they also drafted. You guys may not have heard of this guy. He definitely was not talked about throughout the entire draft endlessly by Mel Kiper. This little known quarterback named Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado was drafted in the 5th round. Kind of a little sleeper pick for them. Had a good game in preseason last night. I'm sure, a lot of people were surprised. Obviously not a name that anyone was talking about at all.
Yeah, I mean, he was 11 for 18 for 134 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Scrambled for his life.
Yeah, I mean, he played lights out. I don't think a whole lot of people really expected that from him. I was glad to see it. I mean, I'm a Shedeur Sanders fan. But it'll be interesting to see what the Browns do at quarterback, because, not this year, but, going forward, they still have Deshaun Watson for a lot of money. They bring in Joe Flacco, who will most likely be the starter, at least for the first few weeks. Kenny Pickett, I would imagine he would be on the chopping block.
Hey, no, he took the last snaps in the Super Bowl, took a knee. Usually that's a good position to be in if you're the last quarterback to take a snap in the Super Bowl.
And then, I mean, Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders are going to make this team. I think Joe Flacco is going to start, and then Shedeur Sanders will probably be the backup, and the Dylan Gabriel will be the emergency quarterback. But I think this is Shedeur's team to lose, really. I mean, with the way he played last night, I can expect that as of right now, the Browns brass has plans for him.
You think so?
In the future. I think so. Or he's a valuable trade chip. So we'll see. But I want to see. I think it would be hilarious that Shedeur Sanders would be the savior of Browns quarterback woes. I think that would just be the funniest thing, because the Browns ruined Baker Mayfield for a couple years, and then randomly Deion Sanders' kid that fell to the 5th round that
they didn't even really want.
Yeah, they were just yeah, we'll take this guy on the cheap. I think that would just be the funniest story from the beginning to the end. Tony, can you give us a rundown of strengths and weaknesses for the Browns?
Yeah. So, obviously Myles Garrett and Mason Graham on the D-line. That'll be a nice addition for them. It'll make the QBs see ghosts out there, because they're just going to be in their face. Judkins and Sampson, they could be the 1-2 punch. I think with Judkins not being signed, that could obviously change that dynamic if Thunder is missing from the 1-2 punch.
You do have to remember Jerome Ford, in Chubb's absence, played very well.
He did. He did do pretty well last year. And I mean, based on the depth chart, he's listed as the RB1. So I think it'll be interesting to see how Jerry Jeudy and really their whole passing game works, because it'll be largely dependent upon who's throwing them the ball. And if they don't have that figured out yet, that chemistry may take a while to develop.
One thing I notice of a trend happening in football is either you're like the Bengals, and we'll get to this a little later, and you just stack up on the best receivers to go with your best quarterback, or you just have one solid receiver and a bunch of guys you've never heard of, and then just get 2 really good tight ends. It's been a weird trend of that split happening in the NFL, and the Browns fall into the latter. Harold Fannin Jr., we touched on it in the draft portion. He's going to be a guy. He should have won the best tight end award last year. So I think tight end is a big strength. Just because Njoku's one of the best tight ends in the NFL. May not put up 1,000-yard stats, but he's definitely up there. And then Fannin has a lot of promise. Joe Flacco loves his tight ends too. So
And I think the Browns seem to like that versatility where they can both block and be a really dynamic receiver.
And Fannin lined up in the backfield a bunch at Bowling Green to show his versatility.
He lined up a quarterback at one point.
Yeah. So, like, it'll be cool to see both of them on the same field, just in different spots. Browns still have a big offensive line, one of the best in the NFL. So
it's good enough that like they signed. You mentioned Lucas and Jenkins earlier. Like those are guys who were starters on other teams that are now backups here.
Yeah. Which it doesn't take a whole lot to be the starter on the Bears when Jenkins was there. A little harder now, but yeah, but those guys are really good. I think they've had enough injuries in the past to be like, let's get some solid guys in here as backups because trends are showing that there's going to be another injury.
We didn't mention Deontay Johnson much, but do we think that's going to be anything, or he's just going to be a headache and get cut?
I don't know. Deontay Johnson, he provided, I think he kind of petered out a little bit last year, but, you know, in the years leading up to this season, I mean, he was pretty solid, I felt. You know, he's someone that you could kind of rely on as a safety blanket. Wasn't the flashiest, wasn't going to, you know, put up 5 touchdowns and 400 yards, but, you know.
I think the talent is for sure there. And if he can get kind of his act together, then he and Judy will be like a solid, not the best, not the sexiest, but a solid receiving duo.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just like ever since he left the Steelers, which again, that's something that we've talked about a couple times during this series. Ever since he left the Steelers, things seem to get kind of off the rails a bit for him.
And it's never a good sign when you've been passed around a whole division.
No.
Like, the Bengals will be the only ones that he hasn't had a brief stint at.
The Browns' defense is by far their strength. They're the reasons that the Browns are going to be in a lot of games this season. It's all going to come down to whoever's at quarterback, like what they're going to do. I think the Browns. This is a division where like even a bad team like the Browns can randomly just rip off 10 wins.
Yeah.
Just of how good their defense is.
I mean, keep in mind, they just made the playoffs, like 2 years ago? And then last year, everything fell apart because of Deshaun Watson being a bum. So, like, this is still a pretty good roster. Like, they still have a lot of those same pieces. It's just going to come down to linebackers, definitely a question mark for me, just because you have the one guy you have the guy you drafted, but, you know, JOK is not going to play this year. He's injured, may never even be the same player again, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah.
But, and then, you know, you're hoping Devin Bush is kind of a guy. He was drafted in the first round and has been kind of passed around the league ever since, hasn't really panned out yet. But now you're relying on him to play a big role.
But you have Jerome Baker now, too, who established himself in Miami as, like, a solid guy. And then he went to Tennessee and kind of, like, just didn't play the same. So, like, if they can get him back to what he was doing in Miami, I think that rotating those two would be perfect for both.
Yeah, and then the secondary is kind of curious to me because you got some guys here. Like, obviously, we all know Denzel Ward is really good, but, like, you know, Greg Newsome is pretty good, like Grant Delpit. Like, those are the kind of guys who can play pretty well. So, like, when are we going to see them play at, like, a high level here? Like, they have the guys. I don't understand why their secondary doesn't do better.
Yeah, and Jim Schwartz may be able to turn that around a little bit. The talent, like you said, is definitely there. Grant Delpit, Denzel Ward is up there in his position. Ronnie Hickman, Greg Newsome, like these are some solid players. What's going to be interesting is, did you know Tommy Reese is
the offensive coordinator?
Yeah. So it'd be like he didn't do great at Notre Dame, and then he went to Alabama and he didn't do great there either. So we'll see what he can do in Cleveland, but yeah, I think Stefanski may be the one to have to call plays based on recent experience.
Yeah, and really overall, like, it's going to be interesting to see how this team does because, last year was pretty much a lost year. Like, everyone knew that Deshaun Watson completely stunk. And when you get in that situation, like, the players, they aren't going to take that extra rep. They're just going to do enough to get done with the day and get out of there. And we saw that unfold on the field throughout the year. They were just an unmitigated mess that couldn't do anything right. But when this team was motivated in 2023, we saw them play well. There's actually a more. I think a lot of people have been pegged as a team that's just going to straight up suck, but I think there's actually a wider range of outcomes here than you would expect. It all comes down to what emerges out of this giant ring of quarterbacks.
Circus,
Well,
if you will.
one of the one of the strengths is the defense, but last year they were middle of the road in passing defense. They were middle of the road, but near the bottom of rushing defense. Um, they like overall just didn't live up to what this defense is, and based on the personnel, they have a top 10 defense. But they just didn't live up to expectations last year. So we'll see what this defense can do. Offensively, they didn't put up a whole lot of stats last year, and part of that is Deshaun Watson. But Joe Flacco's a guy that can get some stats in there, so we'll see if they can get top 15 in anything offensively. But if they want to compete, it's up to this defense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going from a good defense to a bad defense. The only bad defense in the division, Cincinnati Bengals. You can see that they're trying to keep the ship afloat, but it really only on offense. They gave Jamar Chase a big contract. They gave T a big contract. They fumbled Shamar Stewart's contract stuff, and Justin, you can get to that in a second. They still haven't paid Trey Hendrickson. Defense got shredded the other night in the preseason game with 6 starters out, so take that how you want it. But the players that the Bengals did bring in, Lucas Patrick, they brought Samaje Perine back, familiar face, TJ Slayton up the middle, Oren Burks for linebacker depth. So there's a few guys that they brought in that can help. Noah Fant, very underrated signing there at tight end. But they didn't go out and get a bunch of players. I feel like that they could have gone out and gotten Asante Samuel Jr. right now, a big free agent sitting out there. So Bengals, Mike Brown, Katie Blackburn, everybody else, sign Asante Samuel Jr. It can only benefit you. If you don't
we need help on defense. We're one of the worst defenses in the country. Best we could do is Noah Fant.
Yeah, for real.
We have 7 tight ends. That's a lot of tight ends, dude.
Well, Eric All is out for the year. Cam Grady and Tanner McLaughlin, I don't see them making the roster. So really 4. I think Tanner Hudson, Noah Fant, Drew Sample, Mike Gesicki. I think they already knew who they were going to have on the roster once Eric All went down with injury. Justin, they did do halfway decent in the draft. Tell us who they got.
Yeah, so the draft was definitely a little bit interesting. Shamar Stewart was their first round pick. Definitely more of a pick where you're betting on talent compared to production, because if we're being honest, the production just was not there for him. But definitely a talented player, so you're really hoping to develop him, which of course does not help that you didn't have him in the building most of the offseason. Demetrius Knight, though, was a guy that I really liked out of South Carolina. I think that was a really good pickup in the second round. You've got offensive lineman here, Dylan Fairchild, coming out of Georgia. a big offensive lineman who can help out. Already looks like he may help fill a need there. Unseating Cordell Volson, who's a guy who has struggled up front. Again, we've seen this story for the Bengals for years now, where they've needed help on the offensive line, even though they continue to invest resources to it. You've got Barrett Carter, who was a nice sneaky pick at linebacker, and really Taj Brooks may have been my favorite pick of the Bengals draft.
Yes.
He's a really good running back out of Texas Tech who can really factor into multiple ways. I always find myself liking these running back picks because it's just such a deep class. Yeah. So he was kind of one of the forgotten backs in this class, but he's a guy who could really end up contributing even later this year.
Couple things I noticed with the preseason game. Stewart, you could see flashes of his talent. He broke through the line, got a tackle for loss, but then got shoved down to the ground on another play. So it's like he's learning from Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson is teaching him some things, even though Trey is not on the field. So I think Stewart, as long as he remains to be a sponge, is going to take in the pass rushing stuff. I think overall he can be a better defensive end than Trey Hendrickson, because Trey just isn't in on rushing downs, and I think that's where Stewart is really good. Knight played well. Fairchild played well, but Taj Brooks came in and played super well. Took the bulk of the carries. Chase Brown looked really good. He was breaking a bunch of tackles. Jermaine Burton seems to have gotten his act together from last year and kind of is turning things around, so maybe he can contribute more on the offense. But the story is for the Bengals and will be for the next handful of years: Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. That's the team. If those three are not on the field, this team may be one of the worst in the league. But they got a lot going for them on offense. Probably one of the most potent offenses, too.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's really their strengths. The Holy Trinity. The Holy Trinity.
I think their strengths and weaknesses is very simple. Strengths, offense, weakness, defense.
Yes, the whole functional area.
The Bengals were third last in rushing offense last year. So I think with how Chase Brown looked in the preseason, and then adding in Taj Brooks and Samaje Perine, I think you can have the bulk of the rushing offense go through Chase Brown, and you can have the bulk of the running back receiving yards go through Chase Brown. But Perine and Brooks are going to be a nice change of pace, going to get the ball moving still. I think that was one thing that we noticed missing with when Joe Mixon left, is the production on the rushing side was out the window. But the best passing offense. The Lions were second best, and the Bengals still had almost 200 more yards on the Lions. Joe Burrow really could have won MVP last year if the Bengals just made the playoffs. If they have just won one of the early games, I think Joe Burrow actually could have snuck his way into the MVP conversation, because a lot of touchdowns, not a whole lot of turnovers. So defensively, though, kind of close to the bottom on everything. Mid-pack and some things, but they weren't near the top on really anything. Trey Hendrickson, if he can get 17.5 sacks for the third year in a row, I think model of consistency will say that he deserves a contract. It sounds like it's coming down to guaranteed money in the years 2 and 3. So they're really close to a contract. We'll see how that plays out in the coming weeks. Maybe after we record this, they'll probably come to a deal, and then this whole show is thrown out the window.
So we
Breaking news.
we intentionally waited to do this episode last in this series because we wanted to see where this situation would unfold. So we have held out for a very long time trying to see if this would end up anywhere. But my take on it is the Bengals just need to get it done. Trey Hendrickson is one of your most valuable pieces if you're actually going to be serious about trying to contend for a Super Bowl, which you should be when you have a quarterback like Joe Burrow. Like
Whoa.
you
almost called him Joe Flacco there.
no,
But Joe Flacco's elite.
I was trying to power through that. Not trying. We just talked about Joe Flacco a moment ago, but so it almost slipped out there. But yeah, you need him to step up. I mean, you need him in there if you're going to actually be serious about being a contender. And we saw a lot of nonsense this offseason, to be honest, with the Bengals, where it felt like they weren't serious about contending, even though they have a quarterback that should be able to help them.
What's weird about the Bengals is the decision makers on everything are the decision makers on everything. Whereas other organizations have a decision maker for county negotiations, a decision maker for roster moves, a decision maker for this, a decision maker for that. Seems like the same three people, Mike Brown, Katie Blackburn, and Duke Tobin, are the decision makers on everything. The Bengals had their stadium lease expire, and they were in contract negotiations. And that's why they weren't negotiating with Trey Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart.
The Bengals are like the least efficient organization that exists in this league.
I know.
It's honestly embarrassing. Like when you think about it. Like
the whole Shamar Stewart thing, that's the one thing I agree with the Bengals on, is not wanting, like, if like Shamar Stewart's whole thing was he wanted the clause taken out on if he was sitting in jail, as Mike Brown put it, that he still wanted money. I think his agent has a track record of getting fired by Zay Flowers, of getting J.K. Dobbins to sit out for contract-related stuff, a handful of other things. So his agent has a track record with all this. I am on the Bengals side in that contract negotiation. I don't think you should have to play a guy if they decide to make a stupid life decision. The Trey Hendrickson thing alongside the Stewart thing was embarrassing. Pick one to embarrass yourself with. You know?
I think it's the optics of it, right? You have like one of the worst defenses in the league, and you're haggling over, millions of dollars, I guess. But you're haggling with the sack leader. Optically, that just doesn't look good, and it doesn't make sense.
And I've talked to Trey Hendrickson. He's very open about what he wants. He'll tell, if you run into him on the street and you talk to him, he will tell you exactly what he wants. He wants multiple years, and he wants guaranteed money in those multiple years. The Bengals kept throwing a 1-year deal at him with like maybe a second year in the deal, but like an out after the first year. And he's like, no, I want to be around here. Like, he just bought a house. Like, he wants to be in Cincinnati. Like, I think if you look at like the way the Bengals run their team, they're trying to get better, but they're just not getting better. I think they've learned from the Carson Palmer fiasco, so I guess we're making steps here, but like the whole thing for outside looking in, if I wasn't a Bengals fan, I would be laughing at the Bengals the entire time.
We're the laughing stock. And think about this. The fish stinks from the head, right? Mike Brown's damn near 90 years old. Come on, guy. Move along. Go see what else is out there in the world.
Yeah.
Dude's
I mean,
relinquish control.
Mike Brown is taking vacations at the trade deadline in Switzerland. Like, how embarrassing is that?
Like, nope, we can't make any moves to get any better. We're busy over in Switzerland. like it seems like he just has this as his like cash cow, and he's really figured it out perfectly now. Like, you have a marketable quarterback, marketable receivers. You have an offense that's thrilling to watch. So you have all the things you need to fill up the stadium, but except for the fact that like you're not going to win as many games because you don't have a defense that can make stops. But again, defense isn't pleasuring to watch, but you need defense to win football games in the NFL.
Yeah, when the Bengals made it to the Super Bowl, they had a solid defense.
But that year, their defense on paper didn't look like they were going to be that good either. It was just, I think people stepped up and they made it happen. They got hot at the right time.
Lou Anarumo, great coach, love the guy, but I would put the blame on him for, and it's hard, it's hard to put the blame on like the entire team, on the entire defense. So like Lou Anarumo, what he was doing wasn't to the strength of each player. Geno Stone, when he was in Baltimore, led the league in picks, or was close to leading the league in picks. What Lou Anarumo had him do last year was not the same thing. Al Golden's getting back to those basics, giving Geno Stone more of like a free safety role, having him deep and covering instead of being up. And I think that's going to be the difference in the secondary. I think Al Golden is going to change things around. It just wasn't a great look in the preseason. Having backups destroy some of your young starters isn't a good look. But the reason why the Bengals are going to win games is Joe Burrow is going to be prepared. T. Higgins is in a new role. He's not just that big outside receiver now. They're lining him up, doing everything now, so they're teaching him more on how to be a better all-around receiver. And Jamar Chase is the best wide receiver in the league. So when you have top 3 quarterback in the league, you have a number 1 receiver, and you have another top 15 receiver, top 20 receiver, you're going to win a bunch of ball games. You're going to rely on Trey Hendrickson getting back there and the bend not break defense coming back instead of the bend over defense.
Fish stinks from the head.
The fish stinks from the head, dude.
To a better managed team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think, has been a model of consistency over the last 60 years. They have had, 4 head coaches in their entire existence? Mike Tomlin being there for close to 20 years now. Never had a losing season. They've done a lot of changing on this roster, so we'll see if that holds up. We'll get to that in a second. But they did bring in, they brought in DK Metcalf, paid him $100 million. They brought in Robert Woods. They shipped out George Pickens. They brought in Aaron Rodgers. They brought back Mason Rudolph. They brought in a whole slew of quarterbacks and running backs. They signed Darius Slay. They signed Juwan Thornton, and they traded for Jalen Ramsey. They did get rid of Minkah Fitzpatrick, so one big leader of their defense is gone. Justin, how'd they do in the draft?
Yeah, so they had a few picks in the draft this year, not a ton. So there's not so many impact players, but Derek Harmon was their first round pick, defensive tackle out of Oregon to really help on the inside. Or sorry, he's a defensive end. I know he's kind of was between, so I kind of got confused there. Looks like he's going to be an end in this defense. Gives him another pass rusher besides T.J. Watt. Obviously, Cam Hayward at his age is mostly a run stopper, so they really needed someone else to get pressure on quarterbacks, which he's going to do a good job of that. You have Caleb Johnson, the running back out of Iowa. I feel like I'm a broken record here by saying I feel like the running back was a good pick, but there's just that many good running backs in the draft. Caleb Johnson was one of them.
Caleb Johnson was one of those running backs that like just snuck into being really good. Like, I feel like of all the running backs, Ashton Genty was the safest bet, but he was a top 10 pick, top 12 pick. Caleb Johnson was I wouldn't say biggest risk, but I feel like you got better bang for your buck, because not everyone's going to be able to pick top 12. Caleb Johnson was the other guy you could take anywhere in the draft and know what you're getting.
Yeah, exactly. And he's going to be a guy that can really work in between the tackles as well. So he'll be a good, tough running back for this team. Will Howard was a nice sneaky pick because, I mean, he's a guy who felt like carried pretty limited upside, but then you see what he did in that playoff run, And it's really hard to imagine that he would have fallen to the 6th round like he did. So that's a good sneaky pick. Jack Sawyer, though, was probably my favorite pick in this draft. I thought he was going to go a lot earlier. It just makes so much sense that he landed here. Very much a Rust Belt kind of guy, and that's what you want in this defense.
By the way, with Jack Sawyer, I said that he was going 3rd or 4th round, and every single Ohio State fan, including you, Justin, said that I was completely wrong and I don't know what I'm talking about.
Even you, Justin.
Even me. But we'll see. He landed here, so I can't imagine other teams in the division are too thrilled about that.
He reminds me a lot of Sam Hubbard.
Yeah.
Like, he's not going to be like a leader in sacks, but he's going to get you a handful of sacks, and he's going to dominate on the run.
Yeah, gonna make some plays here and there, make some huge plays. And again, like he fits this locker room so well. Very much lunch pail, Rust Belt kind of guy a little bit. So that's what you're looking for the Steelers defense, obviously. A few other reserves, so nothing too huge with the rest of their picks in the draft.
Yeah, Will Howard did break a bone in his hand, but they expect him to be able to kind of play through it. He probably won't get a ton of reps just because of that. They're probably going to try to rest him a little bit. But they signed Mason Rudolph and Aaron Rodgers for a reason. Mason Rudolph, familiar with the team. Aaron Rodgers, big name. He's in his 40s, so we'll see how he plays.
So here's my thoughts on how he plays, though, because last year he was with the Jets, and I feel like he got a lot of flack for how things went, but it's the Jets. The Jets are cursed. When you consider his stats, like he almost had 4,000 passing yards, 28 touchdowns, 11 picks. Like that's not a bad stat line for a Jets quarterback. So I think he can actually still play at a pretty solid level. Obviously, he's not the same as he was like 3 years ago or whenever he last won MVP, but he's still a really good quarterback. It's just all about, can he wipe that Jets stink off of him?
Yeah. Tony, strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah. I think, and we've talked about all of their strengths and their weaknesses, as it were. Their defense, extremely solid, always is. That's the Tomlin special. Then the offense, they bring in Metcalf. He's someone who's hungry to prove, his value. Maybe make Seattle pay a little bit. And so bringing in Rodgers, that makes sense. The only thing I think, kind of the weakness, and it plays into one of their strengths is, how is Aaron Rodgers going to perform at, 40 plus years old? Is he going to be planted back there like a tree? And then if so, if he's not mobile, is the offensive line going to be able to protect him to distribute the ball? So it'll all be at what point of his spiritual journey Rodgers is at.
And I think everybody can agree that at this point, the offensive line is still a project. They have Broderick Jones, who is a big man, bigger, meatier man, but still a little bit of a project. Needs to learn a little bit, but very solid. Zach Frazier, 2nd round pick. Mason McCormick, 4th round pick. Tony Fontenot, 1st round pick last year. So they've spent some capital in the draft collecting some of these players. I think a lot of them are just young. I think if they can get a solid coach in there, I think eventually they can have a very solid offensive line, but they're all learning together. They have Ciamalo from Philly from a handful of years ago. But other than that, they haven't had like a consistent staple on this offensive line that's a veteran that can teach these guys like Steelers football. And I think the other than defense, the offensive line has been like, in order for the Steelers to succeed, they have to have a good offensive line. And I think they'll get to that. It's just going to take some time because they're all young. They all have flaws. They're all learning together.
Yeah, this is a position that was really a major problem spot for several years. And now they kind of went through a bit of a refresh. All of these guys have come in here. All 5 starters have come in here in the last 2 years. Obviously, 4 of them via the draft. Jones in 2023, and then the latter 3 there, Frazier, McCormick, and Fatanu, all came in the 2024 draft. So all 3 of those guys came from last year's draft. So this is a young group, but while last year there's a lot of change, this year all 5 starters are back. Another offseason of working together. So we'll see, but I think it could possibly be a unit that takes a step forward. How big of a step will be a big question, but I think we're kind of underrating what an upgrade DK Metcalf is a receiver over George Pickens.
I was just about to get to that.
Keep in mind, George Pickens, his stat line from last year, the last game of last year, 6 targets, 1 reception, 0 yards, and it felt like 10 penalties.
Yeah, and he just kind of gave up on plays. Like, you could see that it wasn't gonna work out with the Steelers much longer. And I think DK wanted money. I think because he got his money, he's gonna still play super well. Robert Woods, very experienced, a little injury prone, but you have Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, Ben Skowronek, Scotty Miller. I think they have a solid receiver room. And then Freiermuth, very good target in the red zone. Jonnu Smith, bringing him in. I think at this point, Darnell Washington may not be what we think he is at tight end. I can see him moving to tackle and being rotated in at tackle a little bit more. But I think this is a make or break year for keeping Mike Tomlin. If Mike Tomlin can make the playoffs and get a win, I think he stays around. If they don't make the playoffs or if they can't get that first round win, I think we're looking at a Mike Tomlin exit in Pittsburgh.
You think so, even though they have not had a losing record in how many years?
Yeah,
I
think
during his
think so
tenure.
because the Steelers front office is so good and their history says Super Bowl or bust. Like that's their mentality. And if you're barely getting into the playoffs and you're exiting in the first round, there's a certain level of expectation. Like that's what the Bengals wanted to do in the 90s. That's what the Browns have wanted to do before they got Baker Mayfield. Like that's not what the Steelers want to do. So I think we may be looking at Tomlin exiting even with a winning season and a playoff berth. Just because they want to put more trophies in the trophy case.
Whose seat's the hottest in the AFC North? Which coaching seat?
Stefanski.
Think so. I've been sitting on that one since we talked about Cleveland.
Some of the storylines slip through the cracks because in the AFC North, not only is it our home division, there's a lot of storylines for each team. So I think Zach Taylor,
I would argue,
his seat's heating up a little bit.
It's getting pretty warm.
I think it's not as warm as we think it is, just because his rapport with Joe Burrow and like the players in the locker room love Zach Taylor. There's so much respect for him.
Or is it Mike Brown and company that we're at that sweet spot where we're just good enough to fill the seats and charge a premium, but not good enough to do anything else and have to spend more money? Does he fit that mold?
That is true. I mean, Marvin
bit.
Lewis managed to hold on for 18 years without a playoff win?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think
Zach
it
Taylor got into
came
the
down
Super
to,
Bowl, so that should get him to 30.
Yeah. And he's young, so he theoretically could be around for a really long time. Moving on to the staple of the division, the model of consistency, and we said that about the Steelers, but in their entire existence, you could flip a coin and be like, okay, well, the Ravens are going to make the playoffs. Even if they don't, there's a better chance of them making the playoffs than not. And especially with this team, they are one of the top 3 teams in the AFC. They're in the Super Bowl conversation every single year, and it just seems like they're getting better with age. I mean, they bring in DeAndre Hopkins to a position that needed more depth. They brought in Joseph Noteboom from the Rams to be depth on the offensive line. They brought in Jair Alexander, Chibade Wuzie. Like, they're making moves to get better. They realize that Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are going to be around for a while. DK Metcalf is now in the division. Jerry Jeudy isn't a bust. So they realize that in order to win, they're going to have to shut down some receivers and get some receivers of their own. So, Justin, how'd they do in the draft?
Man, they crushed the draft again. They didn't have like a super high amount of early picks, but Malachi Starks at safety, kind of a position that we're starting to see devalued a little bit, but it's a key spot for the Ravens. And this is like the second time in just a few drafts that they took advantage of safeties falling and got a steal in the first round with him. And then in the second round, they got yet another steal. Mike Green out of Marshall was someone that I thought the Bengals should have taken in the first round. He falls all the way to the Ravens in the second round. Just an absolute steal of a pick. I think he even stole a headline the other night with like his ridiculous ability to bend and get around the offensive linemen. He's going to be a dangerous pass rusher for years to come for this team. Another one, I should say, because of course they already have so many. And really, other than that, like there aren't really a ton of headlines here because they mostly draft the reserves after that. Their next pick wasn't until the 4th round. But you look at some of these guys like LeJohntay Wester out of Colorado was a nice little steal there in the 6th round, and he performed well the other night in the preseason game.
Yeah, taking an 87-yard punt return for a touchdown.
Yeah.
What I mean, when you're fighting for Super Bowl, like for Super Bowls, and you keep winning your division every year, you're not really gonna have a whole lot of holes. I think the Ravens have one of the best defenses in the NFL. I think they only got better with Jair Alexander and Malachi Starks. Tony, I took some of the headlines from you, but what are the strengths and weaknesses of
I think
the Ravens?
they're one of the teams that the weaknesses are minuscule compared to some others. When we're talking about the overall knock that the weakness has for them, they bolstered. They added some depth in DeAndre Hopkins. I think that was needed. Zay Flowers, he did the thing last year, but they kind of need that veteran wide receiver, the one that can go get the jump balls, could be a dump off guy. We know he's kind of reaching the end of his career, so they're extremely solid. I think the only weakness that I can see, they really only have 3 quarterbacks on their roster: Lamar Jackson, Cooper Rush, and Devin Leary. So if Lamar Jackson goes down, the engine, the crown jewel of Baltimore's little crow flock, what will their offense look like? Would that totally derail their season? Maybe.
I think that like Lamar Jackson probably should have won the MVP last year because he played even better than his MVP season, which Dak should have won that year. But Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry didn't lose anything coming to the Ravens. Like he got even better. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, elite, very scary duo. You can't stop both of them. They were still 8th in passing. They were first by far in rushing. Had more than the Eagles. They had 100 more yards than the Eagles, and they had 500 more yards in the 3rd place team of the Commanders. The Ravens are an elite team. No team has won this division 3 years in a row since the AFC North became a division. We may see that for the first time this year. I mean, the Ravens, not only do they have one of the best coaches in the NFL in John Harbaugh, not Jim. They have an elite defense. They have an elite offense. There's nothing to complain about. I mean, the past few years, their thing has been they're not the best in the pass game. They brought in DeAndre Hopkins. No matter how old, he comes with a lot of knowledge. So at the very least, he'll make Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers learn more. Zay Flowers, very, very good receiver. I think he can take another step up this year and kind of start putting his name in the top of the wide receiver. Not better than Jamar Chase or anything, but like maybe top 12 receivers in the NFL. I think he can start putting his name there. They have a really good offensive line. Mark Andrews got hurt a couple years ago, really wasn't the same last year. Isaiah Likely is hurt this year. So losing a couple of weapons there, but overall, I mean, Ravens are fighting for another Super Bowl this year.
So
not really much else.
I think what is actually their biggest weakness is one-score games.
Yeah.
They have been pretty bad at one-score games. So really, like, if for the most part, a lot of NFL teams are not in the same weight class as the Ravens right now. But if you can battle with them and stay in the game, there's a lot of times where they will end up beating themselves.
Yeah. And I think they're doing a good job to shut the Bengals down. With bringing in Jair Alexander, but I mean, it's hard to contain the best receiver in the NFL. And even if you can contain the best receiver in the NFL, then T. Higgins is no slouch in his own. Humphrey, not the same as what he used to be, so we'll see if he can shut down T. Higgins. But when the Bengals offense faces a Ravens defense, it's a rock fight. It's the definition of the AFC North.
Absolutely.
And I think the Steelers offense isn't really going to perform overly well against the Ravens, and I don't think the Browns really have enough in the tank to compete. So I think it's going to be the Bengals offense versus the Ravens defense, and I think that may end up being the difference in the division.
So what is your final division order then?
I'm still going to go Ravens, Bengals, Steelers, Browns.
All right.
My gut says that's right. Cincinnati's defensive struggles could let Pittsburgh vault them into the second spot. And I hate to say that, and it breaks my heart to say that. Because, I think for the Bengals, I'm approaching the season, it's do or die. Like, you have to go win a Super Bowl. They're not going to be able to keep this team together long term. Their defensive struggles, they've kind of just deferred the last couple seasons because they haven't made investments in the defense. And so, as when we look at what happened to them last year, they were offensive juggernauts, but the defense, bent over. It wasn't bend, don't break. They completely rolled around on the ground, stop, drop, and roll style. So, I don't know. Unless they unlock something, I think they do move to the 3 spot. I don't know if they make the playoffs. I think they do. I think that's a must for us this year.
Well, you saw the Bengals play their offensive starters, like all of their offensive starters.
Which that was new.
Defense, they left a handful out. So like comparing, like saying that like the Eagles demolished the Bengals starting defense isn't really a storyline. Like they destroyed the young Bengals defense of starters. But putting the starting offense in a preseason game hasn't been seen in Cincinnati since Andy Dalton was here. Like, having them play may give them a head start on the season and may give them like a couple wins back early in the year.
That's been the other key theme for the Bengals is they drop 3-4 games in the beginning of the season and then they're fighting an uphill battle the whole time. That has to stop. That's a coaching thing. Like that's a coaching thing.
Yeah.
Justin, what's your order?
All right. So, okay. So for one here, actually, I'll give that point in a moment with the next question. But this division is really tough to pick. But ultimately, I'm gonna go with the upset in this one. I'm I'm gonna stick with the record staying. No team wins this division 3 times in a row. I don't know how it's gonna happen, but I'm gonna go with the Pittsburgh Steelers to pull the upset and win this division. I think the moves they made this offseason at least got them in the punching class with the Ravens. The Steelers are kind of the anti-Ravens, where if they can stay in a game with you, they usually end up winning. The Steelers are ridiculously good in one-score games. So Steelers, Ravens, Bengals in third, just because I just cannot trust their defense. And then, I'm sorry, Browns, but when we do these prediction shows, like, for the most part, you're generally going to be right more than wrong when picking the Browns to finish fourth. So it's kind of the safe spot to put them because, I mean, that's just where they finish most of the time. Put them in fourth. Maybe they'll surprise you, but
well, the Steelers or Bengals would have to just completely fall apart for the Browns to finish.
And the Ravens floor is just too high to finish fourth unless really a disaster of a season occurs.
I think the Ravens floor is still first place in the division. Like,
unless they just get completely dismantled with injuries.
Yeah,
early.
That would be the only thing. But like,
yeah.
If they stay healthy, their floor is still first place. I don't see enough from the Steelers offense to take them down. I don't see enough from the Bengals defense to take them down. And I don't see enough overall from the Browns to take them down.
And if it's Brown, flush it down, baby.
Yeah. We were supposed to have a Browns guest on, so we were gonna all say that.
Oh man.
But I mean, AFC North is one of those divisions that when you think you got it right, you got it wrong. So
yeah, that's why I decided to go against the grain there a little bit. Kind of shake it up, and we'll see what comes out of it.
It's not unimaginable though. Like I can see a scenario where Pittsburgh is just so solid, no matter how gritty they win by, you know. And I mean, Justin Tucker being out of the Ravens, that's going to add to their one score games. Like, how clutch was he? How many times did he bail them out? You know, so it's possible.
He's
and
kicked
now
6-yard
he
field
needs to be
goals to bail
bailed
him
out.
out. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so how many playoff teams from this division? Now, keep in mind, this division will play the NFC North this year, which is going to be an absolute rock fight. But the one thing that does make up for it is they do play the AFC East. So while you get the Bills in there, obviously you also get the Patriots, Dolphins, and Jets.
I think that this division is like applying for a credit card with a good credit score. It's not guaranteed, but you can pretty much guarantee it. I think that would be 2. I think a third can slip in if the Bengals defense can play better and or the Steelers offense can play.
3 is my guess. And that's what it's going to be.
I'm going to go with 2. I think there's a lot of competition here with the AFC West. There's just not enough playoff spots. But remember, for all the teams. The AFC West has 4 teams they're putting in contention for this.
Remember the AFC West a few years ago when we were like, wow, Russell Wilson and the Broncos are going to be really good. And like we thought then 4 teams are going to get in. You know what you have with the AFC North. You don't necessarily know what you're going to get with the AFC West. And I think that's going to be the difference. I think every year we're like, wow, the AFC West is so good, but then it's just Patrick Mahomes doing Patrick Mahomes things. And the rest of the AFC West is irrelevant.
We have 4 Super Bowl coaches in that division now, so we'll see. But I'm going to stick with my pick of 2 teams from this division. Now, of course, I mean, the Chargers have dealt with significant injuries since we recorded that show, but I am still trying to keep my math together on that.
And flipping off fans.
Yep, that too.
Well, that is the AFC North. Any parting thoughts, gentlemen?
No, it's gonna be a great season to watch. There's
Yeah,
a lot of storylines for us to monitor.
yeah. Which can't
All
be the same.
never
Can't
a
be said
shortage.
as last year. I feel like the storylines that we thought that we had going into the season ended up not being the storylines at all. So then it ended up playing out of almost no storylines in the NFL last year, which is why we didn't really cover it. So this year, as long as there are storylines, we will continue to cover it. Just glad football's back. It was really weird seeing football being back because I had a lot going on this summer, and all of a sudden football was on TV, and I was like, "Wow, this is great." But also, kind of feels like I'm watching a random mid-July uh, NFL Network game at like 2:30 in the morning. So good football's back. Follow us at Updog Sports Talk on everywhere on the internet. Um, YouTube, YouTube Music. You can find us on Spotify, which I gotta work on getting the rest of the episodes on there. Podbean, iHeartRadio. We're on Reddit, X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Follow us everywhere. We love interacting with people. So feel free to comment on our stuff. All of our news and updates go through X. Just best place to follow us on X. If content coming out on Instagram. But yeah, that was the AFC North. We are gonna go live in the fall. Justin is wrapping up college football previews. So if you are a college football fan, definitely follow along with his videos as well. And we will catch you guys live this fall. See you guys.